Hey guys, Wizamet Iridium Spr Stnlss. I'm going to use that today. I'm going to put it in this RazoRock Mamba. This is the 70, a little bit more aggressive than the original Mamba, 50 something. Long titanium handle. This is my Semogue Owners Club, and this is the Taj resin handle, which feels great. And then it's that special grade of badger that they have. And look, there's just a few of the little splits, and I've just used this one time. Oh, there's a pretty significant few splits there. Soaked it just now for 15 minutes maybe. Now I'm going to put it back in the water so it can keep soaking up that water. Minimum 3 minutes is what I find, but when I'm breaking one in, sometimes I don't mind letting it go longer just for grins. This is a soap that I have put inside another tub. This is a Castle Forbes tub, and I have taken and made my own soap the hacky kind of way. I took a full stick of Arko and I shredded it up with a cheese grater. I let it sit out for a few weeks because that industrial lemony, strong, powerful smell needed to dissipate some. So I let that happen, and it does shift down quite a good bit to a nice, mellow, classic, kind of soapy scent. And so that lets you then be able to layer and throw some other scents on top of it. Well, I don't like wearing Stetson aftershave as an aftershave. I don't want to smell it on me for a long period of time. My wife doesn't like it, that sort of thing. However, I thought I might really enjoy it as a soap. So that's what I did. I took basically almost 2 whole bottles to add scent to this, because I had one that was kind of a freebie given to me and another one that I just knew I wasn't going to use. So I put them both in here. And so I'm doing a whole nother video on how to, the timeline on how this happened, how to do it yourself, stirring and all that stuff. It's really simple once you do it, but it's always handy to have a guide. And so now it's pretty firm. And so now we're ready to use it. This will be the inaugural journey of this soap. So before I get my hands wet, let's handle the paper. I just found out either yesterday or today, somebody posted a message from Procter & Gamble Russia that the Polsilvers had been discontinued. And the Polsilvers look exactly like this. And so that's why some people say that the Wizamets are the Polsilvers. I don't know if I'd go about saying that, but I think they're similar. I definitely enjoyed the Wizamet in some of my razors. I think it's a good blade for some of them. I don't know if it's exactly a Polsilver, but it's a good blade. And it's a new one that I'm trying in some of my different razors. Now, at first when I started using the Mamba, I was really recommending it, and I'll continue to recommend it a little bit. But it's fairly smooth. But then when I was using it recently, I was like, wait a minute, I thought it was smoother than this. But I think what's happened is I've really jumped into an area over the last maybe year or so where I'm really working with razors that hold that blade really close to the edge from the top, which pretty much all of them do, but also from the bottom. And that keeps that chatter to a minimum. And I think that helps with smoothness, less irritation, and predictability, comfort, all those wonderful things that I personally value. And so when I started to use my other Mamba, the original, I thought, wow, I thought this was smoother. I thought this used to be smoother. And then I looked at it. Take a look on the underside. Look at how much of the blade that you see. You can see to the almost to the bottom of that registered trademark circle. Now here, let's just a little quick object lesson here. Let's take the blade out. And here is the bottom of that same circle. That is as far as the bottom support goes on this razor. That looks like maybe 7 millimeters, roughly. Just guessing here. That is a lot of space to hang out. And so, I think that's why the Mambas have ended up to kind of fall by the wayside with me in terms of smoothness. But we'll keep shaving with them and see. I love the look. The fit and finish of the material craftsmanship is very nice. And I'll continue to recommend it. Just I think I do like it better than like the DE89 type heads like that Maggard has, and Edwin Jagger and Muley. And it's copied across, so many other makers, resellers. And so, but we'll see. But they might fall down a little bit in my priority list. We'll see. All right, I'm gonna throw some water on my face. It's cold. Just to kind of get the hairs to soften up. All right. And we can go ahead and load up. Shouldn't take too much loading, but I don't know what to expect. So let's go for 40 seconds. 30 seconds is my kind of standard, but let's do 40. If it's overkill, it's overkill. And again, I like to shake out a lot of the water and then add it back later. Okay, we're at 5 seconds right there. Now let's just do 30. Surely that'll be enough lather. And this is a young boar, and so it hasn't really expanded very much. Matter of fact, I may have to come back to the puck before each pass because this guy is so young. That is kind of what you have to do sometimes with those boars. Looks like it's gathering froth pretty well. And there we go. We just did 35 seconds. Let's just go with that. Let's see what, you know what, in this case, the way it looks, let's go ahead and, we just did 35, so let's do 10 more seconds. So we'll go to 01 on the counter, on my phone counter. There we go. Okay. So that's a 45-second load, and let's just see how that works out in the end. I'm going to go ahead and rinse the threads off this tub. And I can definitely smell it. So I believe mission accomplished in terms of getting a nice strongly scented soap that that is going to be around me while I'm shaving. Roger Quintero lather bowl. This is the extra large version. The link to the files, if you want to print your own with a 3D printer, is in the description of the ticket. You can also make use of somebody else's printer if you have a public library that has a printer, or if you want to get an online service and pay them to do it and then ship it to you. Now this brush, I couldn't resist. I thought the Taj handle just looked so good, and I like the bristles on the Semogue Owners Club. And so I found somebody pointed me out to a really good deal on this brush, and I couldn't pass it up. I do have the wooden handled one as well. Now I'm thinking about making this brush my go-to bore that I want to age as quickly as possible, put a lot of uses on it. Right now my Borathon brushes are at about 23 uses each, and so I'm having fun watching those guys age together. And I don't really want to take one of those out of that rotation for this purpose. And since this guy's not in that rotation, I thought maybe he might be the one for me to put more uses on, to be my go-to. Because I think what happens, and there's this really neat thread, probably on Badger and Blade, about pictures of bore brushes that have broken in really well. And I believe what's happening, because the bristle count looks a lot more than what I have, and I think what might be happening is the tips are splitting, but it's not just the tips. It looks like maybe that splitting is continued all the way down the hair, and so you just end up with a much bigger brush than you started out with, because the bristles divide, and then you got that softness. And so I'm really interested in getting to that point. And if I keep all of my bore brushes in a rotation where they each get used in turn, it's going to take forever to get to that point, I think. So I want to pick one to move along a little quicker, to kind of be the fast forward brush, the future brush. He can be the precursor to tell me how the rest of them are going to feel later on. I can feel the backbone in this brush as I'm working around. It definitely feels firmer than my other Semogue Owners Club that has more uses in it. Well, this lather looks terrific. We've put 2 teaspoons in it already. Now, why do I tell you the measurements? Why do I tell you the water measurements? So you can have a general idea how much water I use if you care about that. Also, there are guys who are having trouble with their lathers that sometimes find my videos because they are searching for that particular soap. And so if somebody, if I've done a video on a Southern Witchcraft soap, they're having trouble with that, and they find one of my videos, then now, if they're having trouble, now they've got some objective things that they can use to try to get within the ballpark of a good lather. That's why I record in real time as well, so that they can know how long the mixing took. And I'm not saying mine's the best way, but if it's one way that gets them to a good lather, then once they get a good lather, they can start changing variables, a little bit, and then be able to fine tune it to be how they want. So that's why I do it the way I do it. So now 4 teaspoons of lather in there. And even me, when I revisit a soap, sometimes I'll remember to look at the last recipe that I used that was successful, the ratio of load time and water. And then I'll just use that as a ballpark. Maybe it's maybe the next one ends up to be that exact ratio, but a lot of times it doesn't. There's just a lot of variables in play, even if I've used exactly the same brush. And so, but at least it gives me a ballpark. Like, think about stopping around here, but just evaluate. And sometimes that lets me get a little quicker, because I know, well, if I took 3 teaspoons last time, and that's how much water it took, then I know I can go ahead and add 2 teaspoons pretty easily and not really have to worry too much about it. Then add, gradually add later, but I could add the 2 fairly fast without worrying that I'm going to overhydrate the lather. Well, everything looks good right now. Look at that jaggedy peak right there. Sometimes that means that the lather needs more water. Yeah, that's pretty slick. This is going to work out well. Very few people contest the performance aspects of Arko, but a lot of people will argue about the smell. Industrial, lemony. All that aftershave was pretty strong when it was in tub form. It's kind of not super strong right now. Not anymore. How about that? Now, I believe I'm close, and so I'm going to add water more slowly. All right, let's pull it apart here. Just see what the stretch looks like. Now that's not very long of a stretch, is it? That's a little bit better. I got a little bit more bite out of it. And it did collapse because it was kind of a thin wall. Slowly moving. And now look right here. Look right here. It looks like there was kind of a wet portion, almost like a little hollow area. So let's mix for a little while longer to make sure we try to get some consistency. Now with bores, at some point I do like to press down a little harder than usual, just to make sure the water that is in the center, the very core of the brush, meets up with some soap, and then I back off. I don't spend a lot of time in that high pressure splay. Let's go ahead and shave with this and see what happens. Wouldn't it be interesting? All that work and the scent wasn't strong enough. I mean, I think I'll let this Arko sit and dissipate for a month, much longer than usual. So I sure hope it doesn't have enough strength to fight off the Stetson. We'll see. Okay, let's just let's pull it up on. Yeah, we got a big old glob. Look at that. Kind of wiggle it. We've got a little bit of stretch there. Doesn't have a lot of sheen, but that is, I don't think that's always a sign of a good lather. I don't think all soaps have a sheen like that. I can always add more water during the shave if I need to. Okay, yeah, I can smell that Stetson. All right, water on my face again. Now, since this is a bore brush that's kind of tight, I'm going to press it down into the lather to push that lather up into the brush. And that way it gives me a little bit more lather to work with here. This is a young bore. And so if I need to go back and to the tub here and gather, load up the brush again, that is not atypical. Yeah, I got that Stetson scent. Brush is not prickly. It is kind of scrubby. And I can feel the backbone resistance. And it is fairly common for young bores to kind of eat up some lather. Now I think what some people don't do is they don't soak them prior to the shave. And the bore bristles, they absorb water. So they'll just pull that water right out of the lather. Let's do just a little bit more scrubbing and cleaning of my face because I don't do a pre-shave clean. I'll let my first pass of lather and my brush take care of that. So just a little bit more. Now, one thing you can do when you're kind of playing around and experimenting with a lather, add a little bit more water while you're playing with it. Just see what happens. Does it start to produce more lather, or does it thin out and dissipate and kill the lather? Now sometimes if you haven't pushed enough water into your lather, sometimes this very act will turn your lather into amazing, into this slick and cushiony, wet, creamy lather that you didn't know existed. Sometimes it washes it out, but it's a learning process. if you add that water and it really starts to have lather start coming out the side of the brush in big ways, then you know that your lather was likely a little too dry. All right, this feels good. Feels good on my face. So let's go for it. That handle got some lather on it, so I'm going to rinse that off actually. Easier to hold. That was my concern with the resin handle. Does it get slippery when you're shaving? The answer is yes, if you let soap get on there. But it's probably not a big deal just to do like I just did and rinse it off. All right, let's try the Mamba. So this is the more aggressive Mamba. I would not say that it's an aggressive razor. I would say that they've taken a mild razor and by adding a larger gap have moved it up into a mid-range. A pretty well balanced aggression setting in my opinion. Now see, that is just a comfortable shave right there. This is really working well with the Wizamet. You wouldn't think that the blade is so poorly supported from the bottom. Working really well. Maybe it's flexing the blade more than other razors, and so maybe the blade has enough tension on it to where it doesn't move very much. Of course, it could also be so mild that it's not cutting any hairs, but I don't think that's the case. We'll obviously find that out at the end of the shave. And rinse. Oh yeah, that Stetson is all around me. I like it. Well, that went really well. My face is not super smooth, and so this isn't some kind of miracle blade and razor combo that just instantly has given me some kind of existential shave or super extra-stential, whatever the something higher than your normal experience word might be. Brush feels nice, good massaging action. It is a little harsh, and so if I were using a razor that treated me a little roughly, but maybe cut close, and so I enjoyed using it. That's sometimes the case with higher gap razors, and you just tolerated the tenderness that it gave because it gives you a wonderful shave. If it was like that, then it might contribute to some tenderness and a rough feeling, and we call it brush burn if the brush is what is responsible for the irritation. And so I wouldn't use this brush in its young state. This lather's terrific. I wouldn't use this brush in its young state, being a young boar brush. I wouldn't use it with a rough blade, a rough razor quite yet. It will become very soft. I have two other Semogue Owners Clubs that are wonderful, comfortable, and I will likely have to bring in an O-ring to put around the base of the knot, because the Semogue Owners Club, the SOC, is renowned for the bloom, big bloom. And so I think it's what a lot of people look for if they have no facial hair, because it just covers a big area. Well, I've got facial hair. So you bring in an O-ring and it takes that bloom and it brings it in a little bit. Sometimes you can add 2, maybe even 3 O-rings. All right, let me rinse this off. Well, the comfort in this shave is going very well. Really happy with this razor. Perhaps it is this blade with the razor, who knows, but the first time I used it, I remember liking it as well. So, and I haven't used it very much. I think just one other time. And so we're just dealing with a razor that works really well for my face, at least. And stainless steel, so it's a lifetime type material. Doesn't break the bank like so many of the other stainless steel razors that are out there. I will continue to recommend it. Scent strength is strong. 6, 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10. And that's rare. So I think the excessive amounts of aftershave that I poured into this, for me, for my nose, seems like maybe it was exactly right. Now, this is my problem area, kind of where this is not a problem area here. And so this is the problem area. And so here we are, the third pass. I am feeling a little tenderness. I probably shaved off the beaten path here. And so that's probably what it is. But for the third pass now, I'm going to do something different. This is what I've done. And this is kind of with the grain-ish. And this is what I've done on the second pass. And so now I'm going to start from the bottom and up towards my ear. And that's a cross grain pass in the other direction. A great way to go if you've got a problem area that and you can't do against the grain. Very light. Very light. And then once I get to the edge, then I've got some hairs over here that point the other direction. And I've got to stop and back off, or it will be against the grain. And I'll get irritation and probably some cuts. Oh, I don't need to wash my razor out quite yet. I don't need to quit. I've got a whole cheek over here. Well, the Wizamets right now are not cheap. And so I don't think I would go out and buy a ton of them if I was freaking out about the fact that Pole Silvers might be discontinued. That has been a rumor that's been circulating for years, and they keep coming back. Now, what may have happened, and what somebody may have said, was maybe in 2017 they quit making them, but they just had such a large stockpile that it has taken this long for a lot of the retailers to sell out of them. All right, I can feel just a little bit of irritation. There's a little tiny weeper right there. He'll quit bleeding on his own. And let's do a touch up right there. Do a quick splash on my face. And then we can, doesn't take much. And now I'm going to do that same direction. Like this. Then back like this. And man, I tell you what, it took me so long to figure out the directions on this particular area. You don't want to pull too tight. And I'm also coming at it with a little bit of a slant. Instead of a straight stroke like that, I'm pivoting it almost like a plow moving kind of slanted through the soil. All right, well, smells great. Really happy with that. And then as I move away from the shave, this scent will dissipate and my aftershave or whatever I use will come into play. And I think it's best of both worlds for me. All right, now with Williams, I've heard people do this same thing. Shred it, mixing with aftershave, let it dry, stir, 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 let it dry, stir. And when it all gets hard, press it down, voila. But with Williams, you have a cool name, Willie. And so they take Cowboy Willie, Blue Willie, the cowboy being with Stetson, the blue being with Aqua Velva Blue. You know, it's this cool little kind of name you can use, but Arko is a little bit different. I think it's made in Turkey. So you could say Turkish cowboy, maybe for instance, for Arko Stetson. But I'll just say Arko Stetson, I reckon. Let me do a full rinse here. And since I've got a little bit of irritation right here, I'm going to use cold water. That'll help calm that down a little bit. Because up to now I had been bringing in a little bit of warm to bring the temperature of the water up to kind of a lukewarm temperature. And so then I cut the warm off. And so now I was just dealing with just the cold. And right now it's in the winter. And so it is very cold. All right. Well, there we go. We've now got Arko Performance and Stetson Scent. Let's take a look at the lather itself. See what we feel about it. See if I feel like maybe I want to change the ratio or what. It is a light lather. It does feel very good. I'm not really contacting skin to skin quite yet, but just in terms of feeling the cushion, it does feel nice and luxurious. If I pull it apart like that, you see it's not super hydrated. It's not super elastic, meaning I didn't get a stretch and then a drop. It dissipated and got small before I separated. It didn't like point down, like that. And so it's not overladen with water. But I believe it's very slick. Does the job really well. My razor glided around on my skin really well. Let's see how it feels. The slickness is not really a fatty slickness like sterling. It's a lighter kind of slickness, a little bit watery. We definitely have the micro bubble thing going on. Now it's possible maybe if you wanted to load water more slowly. Now there are some bigger bubbles, but if the camera makes it possible to focus on the thousands of little tiny micro bubbles, you can see those too. And sometimes they're present in the best lathers, because this is also proof that it's hydrated, it's well hydrated. So, and it is a new bore, so I don't mind at all getting an occasional hair. Once the use count gets to around 50 or 60, that's when I might start worrying about hairs coming out. Yeah, very slick, not really luxuriously slick, but this is not a luxury soap. This is a budget soap where you're getting whatever scent you want into a cheap soap that's a good base. It's going to do you well, and that's exactly what we have here. So, yep, there's that Stetson. Washes away, rinses quickly, cleanly. So that's very practical. And I'm going to guess I had enough for 4 passes. At least 3. We'll call it 3. So generous amount of soap, and that was 40 seconds because I thought that perhaps because this is a young bore brush, it might not hold quite as much, and so I might have to come back and reload. And look, I could probably say 4 passes because look, we could probably extract a whole pass from just the brush there. And see, looky there, this was inside the brush and it was actually wetter. It's slicker, not slicker, it's wetter and more liquidy, more bubbly inside the brush than it was outside. So I'm really glad that I pressed in like I was telling you during the mixing process, so that I minimized that water flushing out the lather while it was on my face. Basically, you need to press in the bowl, press the same or slightly more than you would press on your face. And that will help you not to release too much water during the shave. It'll make sure that water gets kind of tested out during the lather making process, and then it's able to combine with the soap, so you don't have a surprise coming for you. And I've had that happen before. I mixed up the soap, didn't press too hard in the bowl, and then what ended up happening was I took that brush to my face, not knowing that it had all this unmixed water in the center. I started splaying on my face more than what I'd done in the bowl, and the water released and just washed out my lather. All right, well, face feels good. I don't feel any tightening, and that cool water just worked on my irritation nicely. Very happy with that. Don't really feel anything anymore. You know, with this light Stetson scent going on, I think I'm just going to use a good balm. Aqua Velva Sensitive 5-in-1 aftershave balm. Show it to you a little longer. Several bucks, and I have it on good authority from some shaving friends who are dry skin folks, that this is a good balm. Keeps you hydrated and nourishes that dry skin for several hours. Now, I don't have that problem. I've got the opposite. I've got oily skin, but I wanted to test this out, and it's done well for me too. And it is a winter after all. All right. Doesn't really have too much scent. It's got just a tiny bit. I don't think it's going to conflict with the cowboy. All right. Well, how many times did I refill my syringe? I believe, yeah, I think I did 4 teaspoons. So then this is 5. I added more to the brush. You know what? I just finished telling you that the brush had more water inside of it. That's probably the water that I added. How about that? All right. So 5 teaspoons is what I put in, and 45 seconds is how long I loaded on the tub. And here we go. And I'll bet, since this is a fairly firm soap, that it's not really going to look like I wore it down very much at all. I think it'll be a soap that gives a good many uses. Also, in case you didn't know, lathering with a bowl can really help you conserve soap. If price is an issue for you and you want to buy some soap and get as many shaves out of it as you can, probably best to skip the face lathering, because so much waste goes down the drain after that first pass, because that's where the concentrate is. And then you have a weaker lather for the second pass and an even weaker one for the third. And even if you get a big brush and you figured out your technique to where you have a nice lather on the third, that's still a lot of waste going down the drain. And so if you use a bowl, you don't have any waste. And then all 3 of your passes, even 4 if you go that far, are the consistent same quality lather the whole time. And you'll use less product per shave if you do it that way. If you've got, soap's fairly cheap, and so if you're not under tight budget constraints, maybe you just want to move through your soap a little quicker and you don't mind that, that's fine. I'm not saying one way or the other, but if you're tight on a budget and you're face lathering, you may want to consider testing it out and switching to the bowl if you really want to get more miles out of your soap. Some people, some friends of mine say that 3 months is what they get out of a tub of sterling. And I did some measurement and some weight, and I use a lot less soap with the bowl, and I get 13 months out of a 5.8 ounce tub of sterling, and almost a full year out of a 4 ounce tub of chiseled face. Those are the tests that I've done. So I can tell you that much information. I'm going to do some more bases later. I've got a milk steak, and I've got the Prix de Provence going as well to see how many uses. Use it for 15 uses or so to be able to then look at the rate and then forecast it out and see how many uses a tub will get me. All right, wonderful scent. Really happy with the project. This is Sugar Daddy Shaves. I'm really happy with the Mamba. This is the 70 that I used today with the longer titanium handle, halo handle. The Taj, I'm glad to put another use on it. It wasn't prickly. It did stay fairly tight. but it did move around. Let's show you that a little bit. It's still very wet. You know, bore brushes do absorb water, and that's what makes them flexible. It's not nearly this flexible when it's dry. It's more like a broom. Okay, but he moves around pretty easily, even keeps his shape just a little bit when you move him from side to side. And that will get, his bloom will get bigger and bigger as the uses add up. So he is not behaving like he will, even in a dozen shaves. He's going to be very different. And so it won't take very long, I believe, before we see some big changes in him. And really happy with my new soap. The Wizamet did a great job in the Mamba 70. All right, well, there we go. This is a video. I hope that there have been some good stuff, good infos in here for you. You take care, and good night.